Hello, everybody. Today is a very special day. 2 years ago, 209 Times had the distinct pleasure and honor to meet somebody that is a hero of mine and a hero of so many of yours, and that is Natasha Tank LaTour. Natasha, as so many of you know, was experienced something very horrific, and that was being shot and left to die by Stockton's serial killer. I'm not going to mention him by name, but he is currently going through trial. We caught up with Natasha because this is literally the 2-year anniversary of the first time that we met and spoke with her, and we're so excited to have you back today.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Nice to see you, Frank.
It's nice to see you.
It always is.
We've had so many fascinating conversations, and I have to tell you, it's always so inspiring to hear your original story, but I think your follow-up story of what has happened in these last 2 years and how this horrific experience has changed your life. And not that this is something that you would ever want for anyone, for this to ever to happen to anyone, but you have this amazing way of seeing the positives in some of the worst, most horrific things that have happened in your life. And I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit, and it's not that, I don't want to use this term, this is disrespectful, but I want you to kind of explain it. It's not that a serial killer, quote unquote, saved your life, but a serial killer's experience, the experience that you had, in some ways it did save your life, didn't it? And would you explain that?
Certainly. Okay, so it wouldn't have happened the way that my outlook on life and the way that I take care of myself, my sobriety, my faith, that wouldn't have happened had I not gotten shot that night. Because I had to reach out for God, and He came. And then I began to develop that relationship. On the other side, I also wouldn't have been handling my health issues. Any kind of issues at all. I wouldn't have been going to doctor's appointments. I wouldn't have been, we just don't do that as addicts. We don't take care of ourselves as well as we should. I'm not going to speak for all of us, but so in that aspect, yes, this, what He meant for evil, God turned into something else. And it's a beautiful experience. There's been very little experiences along the way that have not been beautiful. And I'm able to see that differently. So my outlook on life since the shooting has been incredibly different. Before I was just in a being, in a shell. Just kind of hoping for something to change, but never, going to that further level to change it. And if things got heavy, I didn't know what to do. Now I'm like, okay, so, I'm able to move forward knowing that I have the Lord with me, and I can beat anything, go through anything, while maintaining my sobriety and my love for people.
2 years ago when I met you, you were already saying that this experience had impacted you, and you said with absolute confidence to me that you were going to, your relationship with, your past relationship with drugs, your past relationship with addiction, that was literally in your past. Now at that point, 2 years ago, this was a fresh statement, but I knew then, in the conviction of your voice back then, that you were not going to go back. Yeah. And 2 years later, here we are. So
at the point that we spoke 2 years ago, I think I had 15 months sobriety. So yes. So now today I have 3 years, 5 months, and what's the date?
What is the date? I think October.
It's the 6th.
6th. Yeah.
Okay. No, it's October 5th.
Oh, okay.
So I have 3 years, 5 months, and 5 days sobriety. And yes, I meant that, and I knew that because I knew that I was never. I just knew I was never going to go back. You have to want it. So at that point, I had already fought Frank for my life, for my sobriety, and for my relationship with the Lord, and I knew that it was just unstoppable. As far as that goes, there's nothing on earth that's going to stop me or make me go back to something like that. Not a surgery. Nothing's going to make me, not a downfall in life. There's no trip, there's no bump that I'm going to hit where I'm going to say, okay, I need to drink or I need to go do drugs again. I've been like, it's like I was like delivered from it. Like, and you know, it's weird because it's when it's divine intervention.
Yeah.
You know that like, that's my path. Like, there's not a struggle. There hasn't been a struggle. There hasn't been a, oh, I wonder. Now, every now and then, I think I'm learning that most addicts have this devastating dream where you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I used something or it was there. And it's just horrific. And I've talked to like my mom, who's also clean and sober. I have other cousins of mine, other family members, friends, and they're like, oh, they laugh. Like, oh, that's the dream where God reminds you, this is where you're not. Because it's, you feel like I understand why Robin Williams, committed suicide. It's an incredible thing, and it's one of those things that'll have you walking around town and you'll start crying from where you're not. You gotta like find somewhere. I can't cry here. I'm right downtown. Like you're like, whoa, I'm not right there anymore.
So it's not like you haven't forgotten the pain.
Oh no. I mean, I see it every day. I mean, I used to live in the trenches. This is where the addiction. I lived in the trenches, literally. Like there was there's little dirt roads that we make up, and the community is not what people think. It's a place of, where communities are communities. You know what I mean? But although this may sound kind of crazy, it's like there's a lot of love there. I'll always have. I mean, it's my soft spot. Drug addicts are my soft spot. That shivering alcoholic doesn't. That all he needs is that $1 for a beer. I mean, that's my soft spot. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget that. The homelessness. That's my soft spot. I don't forget those things. I'm grateful not to be there anymore, but I also know that you have to want this sobriety so bad that fucking nothing is going to get in the way. Absolutely nothing, and you'll fight for it.
You,
excuse my language.
I think you've earned the right to
to
throw a few F-bombs here and there. So
yeah.
I think we're okay with that.
Yeah, I'm the F-bomb queen. I'll try to slow down.
Yeah, I think we're okay with that. I have a tremendous amount of respect for you because of your strength, but also because of your empathy that I think is, you haven't forgotten where you came from, right? And I think that's something that I think we all can appreciate. There's an old saying, when you drink the water, don't forget who dug the well.
Mm-hmm.
And
I like that.
And I think that you haven't forgotten about the past. You also really amaze me. You said something off camera about, and this is another one of those sort of controversial things. I know some of your family members you express aren't even too happy with you about this feeling that you have, which is one of forgiveness, even for Mr. Serial Killer.
Yes.
And explain that.
So, I was in the hospital after I got shot, obviously, and I woke up, I think 4 days after, and I wiggled my fingers, I wiggled my toes, and I said, I looked down and there's staples everywhere, and I said, okay, so that really happened, and if that happened, that means you happened with regards to me meeting Jesus. I said, and where are you now? Because you said you'd never leave. And he said, I'm right here. I said, do you do this for everybody? And he said, yes, as long as they call me. I said, will you do this for whoever did this to me? And he said, yes. And I was at a point to where I was like, kind of like, well, that's what's going on. I knew then that I was going to have to work on forgiveness. I was going to have to be a part in my life. So I would, mind you, we didn't know about a serial killer. I was the third person shot. I didn't even know it was the third person shot at that point in time. I just knew that somebody had done this and they weren't going to, I had to pray for them.
Yeah.
And at this point in time, I also had to learn how to pray for myself because I didn't know how. I didn't know that I could just have conversations like I'm having with you, with Jesus, this thing that I can't see. And so, but when he said that he would do it for that person too, I'm like, you're going to do the same thing you just did for me, for this person who's running around shooting me. There's no reason. And so I began to go away from the forgiveness part and just, who is this person? Who did it? Why did this happen? And I go to the streets looking for him. Hey, do you know anything that happened? Somebody got shot over here. Nobody knows anything. You know what I mean? And then I'm expecting. I had a bunch of not necessarily hate, but I was going through a lot. I'm going through different operations and different things in my sobriety, and all this is happening because somebody decided to come out of the woodwork and shoot me. You know what I mean? So that I was, the police aren't helping me. Victim witness isn't helping me. Nobody's helping me. What's going on? And so there was hate that was built up. Like, well, as soon as I find out who did this, oh my God, and then it was like, that was just wearing me down. The goodness that I wanted to express and the happiness and all that stuff, it wasn't healthy. It was weighing me down. And so then when I started to forgive, and I was realizing that, like, I'm going to do it for myself, not for him. I'm going to do it for myself. And when I did, it became easier. It was like, oh, it's so much more easier to love than it is to hate. You know what I mean? It's just so much more easier. And then, and you can grow from it. And there are a couple of beautiful things about forgiveness that nobody really understands or they don't think about, but it makes it easier because it's a hard one. And number one is they don't ever have to know. So you don't ever have to you don't ever have to call anybody up and say, hey, I forgive you. So you can keep that. And number two, it's for yourself. It's for you. It's not for them. You know what I mean? And number three, it really is a healthier decision to make. You waste a lot of time thinking about how you're going to get this person back or what you do if you have the opportunity, or I wish they had the same exact opportunity they gave me. When in reality, I want to rewind because you said that, it's not, although I wouldn't want this to happen to everybody. Well, Frank, if I knew for a fact that they would all live through it like I have, I would want it to definitely happen to everybody.
Wow.
Because it's an experience that, I know that there's very few of us that it's happened to, but I didn't just pick myself up and start to live this life. You know what I mean? Like I was at the bare bottom, scraped off the street. And I had to get to that point to say, hey, God, I'm dying. And then here comes Jesus. So if I knew that would happen to everybody, and despite all the downfalls in between, yeah, I would want to, you'd be surprised how you look at life afterwards. And how much doesn't really matter. There's a whole lot that just doesn't really matter that we focus on.
If he could find his way to heaven, are you okay with that?
I'm perfectly okay with that. I would love that. I would love that. That's between him and God. I believe it's possible entirely. God doesn't look at things how we look at things. It's not the same. We may want to go and have a lynch mob. You know what I mean? I don't know that I would trust myself in a room with him, even though I fully forgive him. It's kind of like when your sibling does something to you and you're like pissed off at him and you're like, okay, I forgive him. But then you see him that Thanksgiving and you're like, it's that kind of a feeling. But when I'm sitting there in a courtroom and he comes, shuffling in because of the scalpels on his thing, I'm not thinking, okay, I hate you or why did you do it? I don't care why you did it. I wouldn't believe the answer. I don't care. I know that it's been for the betterment of me. I can't say that for the rest of the victims. There are victims in this situation and there's a survivor. We're in two totally different ballparks. I forgive who did this to me. You mentioned, at the time, sure, after you were shot and you were on the mend, you had several stitches in your stomach. Yeah, staples, yeah.
Staples. And this has happened again. You have some staples in your stomach now. Would you mind telling the audience about that experience? Because I kind of had your permission off camera to talk about this. So let's go down that road. What's happened with you lately?
So I saw you a couple weeks ago in the street by the courthouse. And then we briefly interacted and you're like, hey, how you doing? And I was like, man, Frank, I got hit with colon cancer. Yeah. So I had, on my 50th birthday, you go around and do, well, actually rewind a little bit. I had a bump right up here, a couple little bumps.
Okay.
And I went to go get a CAT scan for that. And the CAT scan showed that, yes, it was a hernia. Not a big deal. It was painless. But it also showed a couple of large lymph nodes behind the abdomen. And so what does that mean? I didn't know. I just knew that I had an oncology appointment later on. And 2 weeks later, we have an oncology appointment, which leads to a PET scan appointment because I can't have an MRI because of the shrapnel. So
you still have shrapnel in your body.
Yes, I have lots of shrapnel. So if you were to turn the lights, I mean, if you like wait till the night sky comes and you see the little stars, that's what an X-ray looks like. Yeah. So it's in my lung. There's shrapnel all over the place. That prevents an MRI and shoots you right up to the PET scan. And they revealed those lymph nodes again. And so they said, okay, and this process took about a month and a half. Okay, so they're not big enough for us to biopsy. We're not going to worry about those right now. And you know, in college, it's a scary visit. You don't know what that means or what's going on, but all you're thinking is cancer, right? So, we get through that part, and it's kind of celebratory because, you know, we're not going to worry about it right now, but we'll see you in November, kind of thing. So you're jumping around. You don't have cancer, but we're gonna go back in November. And then I did what you're supposed to do when you're 50. You go do the colonoscopy thing. There were signs. There was I was really, really, really tired. And then I'd mentioned to the doctor that every now and then there's blood in the stool. I'm saying this because I want for people to pay attention to their bodies and pay attention if you have that Cologuard kit in your room or you've been sent that Fit Kit thing. Pay attention to it, do it. Because at 50, when they tell you to go do it, I did it, the colonoscopy, and they came out with colon cancer. We don't know what stage it's going to be yet because I had an operation 2 weeks ago. I think it was 2. Yeah, I think it was 2 weeks ago. And what they do is, so they found a polyp, a cancerous polyp, and then they, you go back in and they tattoo it, which is really kind of cool because they have like an ink and needle and they tattoo it. I watched that part, and then they'll go in later on and they take a piece out of your colon, fuse it back together, and then they send that to the pathology. So I'm waiting on the results of that, and I have like all next week. I have 2 appointments, and I have an oncology appointment. Like I'm booked the whole month of October.
Wow. So I assume through this you haven't been working much, right?
No, I haven't been working much. I'm actually off for the month.
Okay.
I feel really good. Of course, there's staples. There's a lot of swelling. This isn't just fat. There's a lot of swelling. There's swelling in my face. There's swelling in my abdomen. Thank God I've been through this before. They tried to go in non-invasively, but they ended up going in through the same incision that was there when I got shot. But they also did a hysterectomy, and they fixed that hernia.
If the shrapnel wasn't there, would they have been able to do this laparoscopically, you think? Or did that
if the shrapnel wasn't there, they would have been able to do a non-invasive.
Okay.
A non-invasive. However, the enlarged uterus would have still been there, and they would have had to take that out.
Okay.
So a 4.5-hour surgery turned into a 9-hour surgery.
Wow.
But again, look at God. He's like, while you're all the way open, I want you to fix all that for her because she's going to be busy. She's got stuff to do.
You have stuff to do. Natasha, the first time that we introduced your story to the world, I don't even remember how many views it was. Hundreds of thousands of people saw it. And I anticipate a lot of your fans, because you definitely have a fan base.
That's crazy.
I'm sure a lot of your fans... No, you do. I'm sure a lot of your fans appreciate you having the courage and the kindness to share your story once again with us. Is there any last things that you'd like to tell your fans about... you've mentioned a couple things. It sounds like your advice is go get a colonoscopy?
Yes, definitely. Once I may get through this, I'm going to be the biggest pain in the ass to everybody out there who's not paying attention to their body and getting their colonoscopy around 50. And the other thing I'd like to say is careful in those comments, because nobody's immune to drug addiction, homelessness, serial killers, or cancer. Careful in those comments.
You're just the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Love seeing you.
No, I love seeing you too.
Let's do this a couple of years from now.
Let's do it.
All right. God bless. Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
All right. Perfect.